Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It, the podcast to help you fix your marriage. I'm Shai Lewis. I'm here with Nina Rosner. Our mission is to help you, Christian married man or woman, navigate conflict and build connection so you can have a thriving marriage. So today our topic is what to say when someone speaks on your behalf without your permission. All right, so Nina, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where there's a conversation, maybe there's multiple people in the room, and you're given a chance to speak, but then someone sort of interjects and speaks for you, or maybe even interrupts you while you're speaking and kind of takes over the conversation. That can be pretty awkward. So, wondering, have you ever had that experience?
Oh, you think? Like you just described typical male behavior and alpha female behavior, right? Like most men interrupt to take control of conversation. I mean, that's just normal. And I've raised two boys. I'm married to a man. I've been in corporate America for many years and ministry for many years. And yeah, hello, it's a thing. And women's speech patterns are completely different. We don't do that. We interrupt, but it's not interruption, it's participation. So it's a whole different deal. Boy, that's hard, right? Like when it's about, let me just take charge here and shut you down or whatever, like I'm ascribing motive, but it really is based on control and dominating. And maybe that feeling of I'm going to dominate is based on their perception of feeling dominated, right? Like who knows?
Right.
But yeah, it happens. And wow, it can do everything from set you off to have you feel compassion and sad for somebody, like, and everything in between, which the goal I think would be, okay, Lord, how do you want me to interact with this?
Yeah. So that's what we want to discuss today is the what to say, what to do when that happens, because it can be a little bit frustrating if you're aware, like you said, of what is really going on there. So if you don't do this well, you could actually make the situation worse, cause more awkwardness for everyone. So we're going to try to help you guys out today. All right. So I know in marriage, our audience is mostly Christian married men and women. I know in marriage, this can happen for a myriad of reasons. Sometimes it's because it's been a decision in the home that one person, usually the husband, will speak for the family in certain topics, whether it's a decision on how to raise the children, what church to go to, things like that. Some families actually intentionally do this. But other times there's liberty that's taken in marriage where, it could be the wife too, where she might say, well, my husband would never, or, we don't do this. And the spouse might feel completely different about the situation. And so navigating that can be really tricky. So I don't know. Do you think it's a good idea to have a conversation maybe before, speaking on behalf of your spouse, or do we have that right as a husband or a wife?
Well, gosh, those are loaded questions. Thanks.
Sorry.
Do we have the right? Oneness implies that there's two full people coming to the equation. Okay. So, and we are equal heirs, right? And there's different areas of responsibility for sure. I'm a bit of a roles person in marriage. Like I think based on, and I base this on biology. Women are more nurturing. Sorry if you don't like this, but we are wired that way. We have oxytocin, the bonding hormone. We teach infants to trust by making eye contact with them while we're breastfeeding. Like that is the most basic primal connection that is formed in a human is when we're at our mother's breast and we're making eye contact. And so to be on the other end of that, to give that nurturing, that's uniquely in our wiring. I realized today, by the way, that I don't care about being politically correct. So I'm not even going to address the people. They're like, oh, you could be a boy or a girl. It's like, no, you can't. Men bond differently. They have this hormone in excess compared to females. It's not excessive if you're male, but it's called vasopressin. And so you want to bond with a dude, you don't do it by gazing into their eyes for hours. Women bond immediately. Oxytocin makes you like half drunk when you have that newborn. You didn't know it, and now you're in love. Yes, because you actually have that. I remember with my firstborn, I was just like lost and la la land of love. This eye contact is oxytocin. It's a drug. Men don't have that experience. Men bond through this hormone called vasopressin, which is we're going to conquer a thing. We're going to solve a problem together. It's why when men go to war, let's make corporate team building, where you're solving problems and those kinds of things, and a lot of these outward bound things came into being because that's how men bond with each other, is through conquering, through solving problems, all of that kind of stuff. So we're different for sure. And then how do we both show up respectfully in a conversation? So if we're married to somebody, and some women are actually like, we're more agreeable by nature, and that's biology too. But in general, we are. But, if there's some women, they're like totally fine and don't want to think about our position on the Middle East as a couple. Like, I don't want to know. Just tell me there's certain things that I don't want to go research. And I ask my husband, how are you voting on this? And he'll tell me, and I'll ask him, okay, tell me more about that. I'll ask him for his opinion, and then I'll consider that. And usually I just do the same thing. Most of the time we think exactly the same politically, which makes that super easy. But if you have a different opinion and you're being spoken for, that can be, it's the range of, is this a demeaning experience for you? Or is this an honoring experience for you? Why is it happening? What's going on with that? And are you okay with it? So it kind of I don't want to tell somebody in their marriage, you should never do this.
Yeah.
But I want to open a door for people to have an awareness of, if this is bothering you, you should do something with that. You should say something about it.
Well, I think that is like the thing that needs to be maybe shared a little bit, is that, okay, what do you say? What's the what to say if there is a difference of opinion, if you're not on the same page with the war that's happening, and you kind of want to have a united front, but it's not really united.
Yeah, and that's reality, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be things where people think differently about them. And that's hard when kids are little, because they see their parents as the same person. Like, they literally don't separate that until they're like late teens, early 20s. They start making that, oh, not everybody thinks this way. Okay, so dad has a thought, mom has a thought. But when it's really quite fine to not have the same opinion, but how you handle communicating it matters. Because you want to have, our culture's lost the ability to do this, but you want to have the means of saying, hey, do I understand you properly? You're saying da, 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 and you repeat it back to them, and they go, yeah. And then are you open to a different thought? And they say, well, sure. If they have half a brain, they do. If they're primitive and have an IQ of 67, they're not. And then you know what you're dealing with, and you don't try to go there. Right? That's just, yeah. And so you take a different strategy at that point, which would be one of, I know you want me to feel loved. And last night at dinner, when you interrupted me, spoke over me in front of the kids, that felt unloving. And it's hard for me to manage them during the day when they feel like they can disrespect me because you did. So in the future, and this is how you talk to men because men need solutions. In the future, I'd like you to wait till I finish. And if you have something different to say, then I'd like you to treat me like one of your work colleagues and, be respectful with what I just said and calmly present your different point of view. That's one of the things men do really well in general is they speak respectfully to each other when they disagree.
Mm.
And so we need to make sure that we're doing that as well.
Okay, so that's obviously an example of what to do when you're in a situation with your spouse. What about if it's like a workplace or a ministry situation and maybe there is you know a tagline that needs to be communicated, or maybe there is something that needs to be said to the customer that the organization needs to be aligned on, and you might be the person communicating that, but then maybe your boss or your colleague jumps in to sort of interject what they think.
Yeah.
And that can be really awkward. How would you recommend we address something like that happens? Is it the same way we would do in marriage, where you do it off to the side, have a private conversation?
Yeah, it depends. If it's in a meeting when it occurs and I'm getting talked over by somebody with more authority than I have, I'm going to be respectful and I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let them finish. And then I'll put my hand up and I'll say, can I finish? And then they'll give me permission for that. And then I'll say, thank you so much. And then I'll continue where I left off in that space. And I won't do it arrogantly. I might even cushion and say, I know what you said is a little bit different than what I was saying. I'd like to finish my thought with that because I'm concerned about the ethics, and I'll give a reason for my difference of opinion. And so I'd like us to be able to consider this piece of information as we're making decisions, if that's all right with you. And that person will then be on the spot to say yes. And that's usually what they do, because I've given a really good reason that I should be heard. It's unfortunate that this is a thing in culture. Let's acknowledge that. But to not be aware that it's a thing in culture is to say, well, I'm just going to talk however I'm going to talk, and they can just figure it out. Like, that means I have the social skills of a 4-year-old. So I need to be aware. Like, I always think of Richard Nixon getting off a plane in some country, and he did that thing he used to do with his fingers up in the air and making the peace sign. Well, he basically flipped everybody off in that culture when he did that. Super not acceptable. So you have to know your audience. So I just gave an example of somebody with more authority than I had. If I was dealing with a peer or a subordinate, then I need to behave in a way that communicates, no, you don't do that to me here. And so I would probably raise my volume a little bit and keep going. Now, if I'm dealing with a man, I may not do that. I'd probably do the same thing that I did with the person in a higher authority, because then they're going to view that as interruption towards them, which is going to make them more aggressive. I don't need that. What I need is to be heard. So I'll let them finish, and then I'll put my finger up and say, do you mind if I finish? Thank you so much. So the reason I brought this up was, and then ethical reason, and then my point of view. And so I want to honor it. I want to behave with grace and poise in that situation versus getting my knickers in and not acting like a 7-year-old. So.
Okay. And then there's a whole podcast around how to do that, first of all.
Yeah.
You got to have self-control. You got to know it's not personal. You got to have dealt with your triggers.
Oh, yeah.
To be poised in that kind of situation means maturity. So.
Yeah. Yeah. If I get tipped over by it, that's a reflection of me. If I can immediately go, oh, they're interrupting me. Isn't that interesting? Like, what is it in them that's so childish? That's what they do. Good. And I'm that person too sometimes. Like, I'm not so perfect at this. So I have my moments.
Women, like you said, we do it to participate. Like we're like excited. And if you're like me, sometimes you don't want to forget what you're gonna say. So you just
Oh
kind of
yeah.
because you're gonna lose your thought.
Well, and I'm not, I mean, I know when I do this, and I didn't used to, but sometimes I just disagree with somebody and I want to say what I want to say because I think they're wrong. Like there's
Yeah.
less of that in my life, but still interruption, still not cool.
So is there a time where this can be actually like a good thing? Like say you're the boss and you have a team member and you know more about a subject matter than they might know, and you're in front of a customer or a client and they don't know. Is it a good thing to maybe take more of center stage in that moment? Or do you need to kind of have a game plan beforehand with your teammate to sort of lay the groundwork and say, okay, listen, I'm going to do most of the talking here. Don't take it personal. I know you're good at your job, kind of thing, so that there's no confusion? Or is it like you just kind of do your thing? Because the reason I'm asking is that's happened to me a lot. It's like almost like I don't know if it's being female, if it's the male female thing, or if it's just more experienced, less experienced thing where they just kind of take over
Yep.
sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, it's very common for males to do that. And they know a lot of stuff, right? And they have
Mm-hmm.
confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So, it makes sense for that to be normal. And so working things ahead of time, yeah, absolutely. Hey, Dave, I'm going to work through this part of the conversation. We're going to go over the data from last year. Is that cool with you? So anything you can avoid preemptively, yeah, have at it. If you're a boss and you're training somebody, like, you got to figure out ahead of time, okay, what are we doing? How do I not destroy my salesperson and their self-esteem? And if you go in, like, so much of it's about expectation setting for other people. So saying to your friend or your employee or your coworker, hey, I know we're going to go do this thing. Tell me what you were thinking you were going to do. What do you have as a goal? Like actually meta communication around the event,
Mm-hmm.
and then saying, okay, I was thinking about this. How does that fit with your situation? And then they might be, oh, I didn't think of that. Okay, cool. So if you're working with customers, you want to make sure that you give, or if you're parenting kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that if you're training people, it's not about perfection. It's about the doing and the growing. So hopefully you won't be in a situation where you could lose the customer, right? If you get in that, you might, do one of these things where it's like, hey, do you mind if I interject something? I don't know that we've told you this. And then you talk to your customer. This is new, so it's not Paul's fault that he does an XYZ, right? Because you always want to let people save face,
Yes.
and love covers, right, a multitude of sins. That has multiple meanings, but in communication it means I'm not going to out you. It means I've got your back. I'm not going to sell you out. I don't need to look cool. Like I know who I am, so I don't need to feel like I'm the one that hit the home run, but I want this to go well for everybody. So I'm apt to work with people up front and let them go into situations like I did with this all my kids. This is how we did things. I was their coach, would ask them questions. What could possibly go wrong with that strategy? I haven't thought of that. Okay, so what do you think could happen? And then being there to support and do backup in a face saving, encouraging kind of way. That's really, really important. It builds the identity of other people when they know that, and it builds trust when they know that you have their back.
Absolutely. And it is a skill that a lot of people don't have in leadership, unfortunately, is knowing how to allow others to have the floor and really encourage others to lead in whatever they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And with children it's the same. Like, my youngest, because she's the youngest, she gets talked over. And so it's easy for me to notice that. And so I have to make the other two let
Mm-hmm.
her have the floor
Yeah.
so she can get her words out. And I recognize that that is a part of building her confidence as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same in any other circumstance with adults as well. And so I wish people recognize that more in
Mm-hmm.
those situations. And I'm wondering if it's really like if it's a control thing, or if it's an impatient thing, or if it's a I want to be cool thing, or like what
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
it?
Could be any of those things, right? Like with your other kids, oh, mom, she takes forever to say a thing. Yes, she does, honey. And you're
Yes.
going to give her that time because the Lord is teaching you patience, because that's what love looks like. That's what we do here. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He uses all of it for good. So she doesn't need to speak faster just yet. She needs the opportunity. And so you create that space for her as the leader. And then you coach the others when they complain. You're doing all of this really, really well. They're so blessed to have you for a mom. That's awesome.
Thank you. So what if you're the person that's like being talked over? Is there something that like you can say to your boss or to your colleague? Like, I think you've given great examples of what to do when you're the one in leadership. But what if you're the one that's being talked over and it's like
Yeah.
you've had enough of it, you want it to stop.
Yeah. So I keep thinking of this movie from the 80s called War of the Roses. And Michael Douglas, I think, was in it. And it was this brutal thing. One of the scenes in there is he has his wife, he's some corporate person trying to be a giant and whatever. And he has his wife to tell this story, and she does a really bad job. And it's a dinner table kind of thing. And she just kind of botches the story. He gets visibly irritated with her, rolls his eyes, all the stuff, takes over telling the story, tells the story, and everybody laughs at him and his storytelling skills. And she's mortified, feels crushed and humiliated.
Hmm.
And who hasn't been in her shoes where somebody didn't have the patience and didn't want to give you space, didn't create. So you sit there and you're like, what do you do with that? Well, she ended up getting vengeance, which I don't recommend. She was breaking his stuff and, she destroyed their house that they built so meticulously. And, well, they both did. But anyway, so there's the what not to do. And I think about that situation, and after dinner was over, I think it would have been a perfect time for her to go to him and say, I know you love me, and I know that you're a better storyteller than I am. And I felt super embarrassed at how that was handled in front of our friends.
Mm.
I would like to have a heads up. If you're going to ask me to tell a story, I'll actually practice it, and you could coach me on it, because you are a master storyteller. So I don't want to be put on the spot like that again. But what I really don't want is to be treated with such disdain and contempt in front of the people I care about. And so I would have done something that gives him, and this is a key thing because of how men are wired, you got to give them solutions. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to stop doing. And the why of it. I will feel loved. And you build up the reputation. You give, I know you love me. So you're not accusing them of, you don't love me. It's not just complaint. That doesn't work with men.
Yeah, that's great. Give them a solution, something to strive for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wants to hit a home run. He wants most of the men I work with, even in the worst of marriages, they're good people who love Jesus and don't know what their wives want. They have no clue how to get. So let's make it easy for them. And a lot of women, and this makes me crazy. A lot of women are like, well, I shouldn't have to tell him. Well, maybe if he's a girl, but he's not. He is not like you. So grow up and ask for what you want. He doesn't know. Like, seriously. And if you've said it before, and he hasn't gotten it, maybe you don't have any boundaries. And maybe signing up for strength and dignity is what you need, because you don't have that in your life. You're not respecting yourself. So sorry, did I say that aloud? That was a little bit, I think there's teeth in that one.
We're very clear, firm, truth and
Okay.
love style. And I think we need that sometimes. So yeah, no, that's actually great. I think that's a good stopping point for us, because we do have
Yeah, let's stop now that I've kicked people. Okay. Sorry. It's a brutal truth, but it was one I needed. Just saying, been there, done that.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes you need to be told the truth, and the truth hurts, but it helps
It
also.
does.
So, all right. I think we do have quite a bit for our listeners from this. Thank you so much. So I just want to quickly summarize. If you're in a situation, a meeting at work, or maybe at home, awkward dinner, and you're being spoken over, someone speaking on your behalf, you don't agree with what they're saying, you didn't give them permission to do that, there's some things you can do. If you feel differently about what's being said, give them something to aim for, especially if it's a man you're dealing with or your husband. Let them know that you love them, but you'd like to see something different happen. If they have authority over you at work, for instance, ask for permission to share your thoughts, to finish your thoughts. If you are in leadership, then, maybe continue talking and communicate the message that this is not for this moment. And hopefully they'll get the picture. But always have grace and poise no matter what in that situation. You want to make sure everyone feels respected. One of the things you can also do is have a game plan ahead of time, so that everyone is on the same page with who will speak when and who will say what. And if all else fails, you can start to set boundaries so that, the message can be communicated even more clear if needed. So hopefully that helps. We invite you to check out our website, greaterimpact.org. And we have a free PDF for you called Find Your Voice, five steps. We've changed the name, 5 steps for how to stop walking on eggshells. And also we have, like Nina mentioned, the Strength and Dignity e-course for you to sign up for, as well as some coaching products. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining.